further ado, it is my great pleasure to turn the call over to our founder, Tyler Norton. Tyler?
Hello, Justin.
Hey, there he is.
Well, hello to the ASEA family. Justin, thanks for inviting me to join you guys today. It's a real privilege to be with you. And I hope, as Justin said, that you're all healthy and happy and doing well. And I do wish we had been able to go to our Ascent locations and gather together. We've been living through quite an interesting time, that's for sure. But I do feel very happy to be able to join you via technology today. And my heart is with all of you guys as if we were together in a room. I have been pondering and thinking about some things I might be able to share today. I have a few slides that I may share. I want to start with a concept that I've shared on a couple other calls. Tammy Gates gave me a book recently called Living Forward. And the book has a really powerful thought process about what it means to face adversity and challenge. And I've shared this on a couple other calls recently. So if you have heard this, please forgive me for saying it again. But I think it's something I've really thought about almost daily or weekly since the quarantine and the challenges we've been dealing with COVID. And it said, when you're faced with a challenge or adversity, ask yourself, what does this make possible? And that's had a profound effect on me these last 6 or 8 weeks. As you know, we haven't been traveling. And as a result of that, we're not together at Ascent right now. But because I haven't been traveling, this challenge has made some other things possible. I've had a little more time to focus on my family, a little more time to focus on health and some disciplines that are difficult to do when you're traveling. I've been able to accomplish some personal goals that I've had for a long time. I think each of us would do well as we look at this challenge and where we are right now to say, what does this make possible, instead of focusing on what is now impossible, like, for example, getting to Bali or Dubrovnik and being together at Ascent. Right now, impossible. We can't do it. But what does this challenge make possible? What has it allowed for us to consider doing? And I hope that each of you will give some thought to that as you process this unique time in history, certainly unique time in my life and in all of our lives. And let's start by processing how we might be able to harness this challenge and use it to our advantage by making some things possible that we never could have done before. So that's kind of my first challenge and invitation to all of you. I have so many things I want to share today. I probably have more things jotted down and slides prepared. I've got a lot I want to cover. I hope, I'm going to look at my clock here. I hope to be done here inside the next 45 minutes. So I'll try to be prioritized in what I share. In a couple different settings, I've shared one of my most recent and most favorite quotes. I think this applies to life. I think it applies to almost any initiative that you set out to do. And the quote is from Keith Yamashita, who is one of my favorite thought leaders and a founder of a consulting firm in the Silicon Valley, worked with IBM and many other large companies around the world. And he has a saying that if you're stuck, if you're trying to get unstuck, and if you're going to launch an effort, to start from a pure place with equal parts empathy and aspiration. Now think about that for just a minute. If you're going to start an initiative, if you're trying to get unstuck, if you're trying to restart, start from a pure place with equal parts empathy and aspiration. That's a very interesting quote. As I've thought about my dad's intentions to start ASEA, I can tell you that he was highly concerned about people needing this product, in particular our Redox supplement product. And he had a high degree of empathy. But my father is also a great achiever, and so he also had aspiration. But the challenge is to start from a pure place. And I think if you asked yourself, what does a pure place really mean? I think it means that your motives are not so imbalanced towards what we would call E over P, or economic motivations, or even ego motivations, that it's not a pure place. I think there are a lot of people that start businesses, and I've had people in network marketing tell me that the product doesn't matter, which was really interesting. I had several people early on as we started to grow the company and to work recruiting. There were some big leaders that I met with who said, doesn't matter what the product is. In network marketing, it's more about building a team and momentum. I never once could get settled with that concept because, and I think the reason now that I know this quote, is I didn't feel like that was starting from a pure place. So I want to challenge you to maybe check in right now. Maybe this is one of the things that this current challenge makes possible, is for you to say, I'm going to restart. I'm going to reconnect with why I started, and I want to make sure I'm starting from a pure place. What does a pure place look like to you? Certainly there's nothing wrong with being motivated to build your business, to bless your family, and to create economic outcomes. But if those become, as we've discussed many times in our ethos training, if that becomes the only reason or the only basis for doing it, I might suggest that's not quite the pure place that Keith Yamashita is speaking about in his quote. I think what he's trying to suggest to us is that our motives are pure, and that we have clean earth to till, that we're starting from a clean place, and that our intent is to go out and grow and build and become. That's the aspirational side of it. But it's also to have empathy and awareness of the people we interact with and that are around us. And I think ASEA may be the best place in the world to allow you to start from a pure place and still have equal parts empathy and aspiration. I know that I've worked for companies where empathy wasn't really discussed or promoted or even an option, really. It was all aspiration. And rarely did I sense or feel that the motives were pure. And so one thing that I've tried to do here in my heart and mind is consistently ask myself these types of questions. Are we doing this for the right reasons, and are we coming at it from a pure place? So my first principle I wanted to share today, and this is true of someone that's just starting, that you're leading, but it can also be true of you if you're restarting or trying to get unstuck. Maybe you don't feel like you're doing as well or as much or as becoming as much as you'd like. Then start over and approach it from the perspective of saying, I'm going to start over from a pure place. And I'm going to have an aspiration, something I want to accomplish and achieve, but it's not going to be 100% of the equation. It's going to be equal to my sense of empathy for the people around me. That one phrase has become very meaningful for me since I heard it, I think about a year and a half ago, because I think it describes a lot of the ethos that I feel is so central to who we are as a company, which is this notion of how we see and treat the opportunity should not be greater than how we see and treat people, and maybe not even greater than how we see and treat ourselves. And if you said the equal part aspiration and empathy is something that even speaks to how we see and treat ourselves. So I want to start with that. And I challenge you to give some thought to that phrase, that start from a pure place with equal parts empathy, of course, meaning our awareness of the feelings and needs of others around us, and aspiration, desires or goals and objectives that we'd like to accomplish. I'm just glancing at some notes that I made here. And years ago, I had the opportunity in the insurance and investment industry to work with some of the very best minds that were both advisors and consultants to that industry. And there was one gentleman who would tell me a phrase all the time that I'd like to promote to you guys today. And the phrase is that honest, intelligent, consistent effort is always rewarded. So I'm going to say it again. Honest, intelligent, consistent effort is always rewarded. Now, to give you some context, I was working in an industry not unlike network marketing, where maybe 1 to 1.5 people out of 10 people survive and succeed. Not an easy industry to succeed in. They would hire 10, 2.5, 3 years later, there'd be 1, maybe 2 standing still in the business. And the reason this phrase was so compelling to me was because in a world where people were leaving or failing because they just didn't see the reward, this gentleman that taught me this phrase said, we never forget that honest, intelligent, and consistent effort is always rewarded. I bumped into a book called Talent is Overrated, and it's an interesting read. And it approaches this concept of deliberate practice. And there are 5 principles of deliberate practice that kind of call back to this phrase that honest, intelligent, consistent effort is always rewarded. I have 2 screens here. I'm going to be glancing up to these principles as I share some of them with you. The first is that talent is not enough, that practice is the difference between good and great. And what that means is doing it again and again and again and again is so fundamental. I don't know, I just got a little emotional thinking about my son. I don't know of anyone that is an example of this more to me than my 10-year-old son right now. He wakes up every single day and goes out to practice basketball every day. It's not uncommon for me to leave the house. I'll pull my car out of the garage and he's in the front driveway shooting baskets. My wife has set up a little high school boy that likes to play ball and is really good locally here. And he comes over and practices with him during the day for an hour, a couple times a week. My son is such a good example to me of what it means to practice. And I think we need to remember that this business requires honest, intelligent, and consistent effort, which is really just saying we're practicing and we're learning along the way. We're not going to be perfect. We're going to miss. But the notion of talent being overrated suggests that really there isn't anyone that you know that was born as an ambassador triple diamond or a presidential diamond or even a triple diamond or a gold executive. No one was born with that. And that the notion of that's a really talented person is a bit overrated on the basis that nobody really knows how much time and consistent and deliberate practice has gone into what it is that you might be seeing. You've probably heard of Malcolm Gladwell's book called Outliers that speaks about the 10,000 hours concept. One of the stories in that book is about the Beatles, who prior to their commercial success played 6 and 7 nights a week. I believe in Germany is where it was. And they just practiced all the time. And I begin to think about someone like Trish Schwankler or other great leaders we have in this company. They never stop practicing their craft. They're always practicing. So the first principle of deliberate practice is that talent is not enough, and that the difference between someone being good and someone being great is practice. And I think that's something we should remember as we think about honest, intelligent, and consistent effort always being rewarded. There's a second principle that expert performance is actually really hard work, and it requires repeated actions. In just a minute, I'm going to show you a cycle that points to this, but I want to make sure it's clear that part of what I wanted to talk about is the power of high activity, meaning repeated action, high activity, doing it again and again and again. When I was first starting in a commission sales environment as a mid-20-something-year-old man, I'd recently been married, was trying to figure it out. And I remember distinctly my boss at the time, a dear, dear friend of mine by the name of Chuck Cutler. And Chuck came to me and said, I'm waiting to see the switch flip in your mind. I'm waiting to see that you get it. And I remember being really frustrated with what did that mean? And what he was saying was that there was a school that I was going through. It was a school of transactions. It was a school of activity. And the more I went through it, it didn't get any easier. It just got to where I was better at it. I learned phrases and approaches that were more effective than others. And I had to go through that practice cycle many, many times until I started to it made sense to me. I started to see success. People started to respond to what I was offering, and my sales increased and my ability to grow and develop my practice increased. And it was interesting because I remember being frustrated when he said, I'm waiting for the switch to flip. But it happened. And I remember distinctly sitting down with him and he said, okay, you're ready for the next step. In this case, I became a sales manager and was recruiting and developing a team, not unlike all of you. And so I really learned what it meant to work on something until it got easier, not because the nature of it had changed, that great quote, but because my ability to do it had gotten better through what? Through consistent, intelligent, honest effort in this deliberate practice. And this book also talks about the importance and the principle of breaking your practice into manageable parts. So taking time to think through and say, what are the individual components of my ability here, and how do I break those down so that I can focus on them? I'll give you an example. When I first started in that prior career, there was one prevailing activity every week that we were told was non-negotiable by our sales manager. And it was to set 10 openers every week. Now, what that meant was that I had to make enough phone calls and contacts to set 10 appointments to meet face-to-face with someone to do what we refer to as a discovery meeting, where they would share with me long-term financial objectives, key risks and concerns, what they were trying to accomplish, what their current scenario was in terms of finances, and so on and so forth. And so we had to set 10 of those every week. And it was just 10 openers. That's what we called it. And I remember him saying to me, I was a pretty aggressive, young, just out of school guy. I wanted to succeed, wanted to be successful. And he said to me, I need you to spare me your brilliance. Now, to you, that might sound offensive. To me, it did at the time. I was like, spare me your brilliance. What are you saying? He goes, I don't really have interest in your brilliance and you telling me that you're better at this or you know how to do this better than me. And I thought, well, that's kind of arrogant. And then he said, spare me your brilliance and do one thing and do it every week. And you will survive. You will be the one out of 10 people that can make it in this business. And he said, that is to set 10 new openers every week. 2 a day, 10 a week. Well, to be honest, I kind of heard that, but it wasn't till maybe a few months into it where I realized that's the game. That's the name of the game. If I could set 10 openers every week, now I could be setting an appointment for 3 weeks out. I could be setting an appointment for 2 days out. It didn't matter. It counted as long as you said to me, yeah, I'm willing to sit down for 30 to 45 minutes and over coffee, over lunch, at your home, in my office. But I had to set an opener with a person or an individual and family that wanted to sit down with me to discuss this. The truth of the matter is that I could have done a host of other things, but that one thing, sparing my brilliance, not trying to outthink my manager, not trying to say, well, I've got a better way to do this. It was that one simple, consistent activity every week that enabled me to be that one person that succeeded, to have the switch actually flip and the light go on and I go, I know how to do this. I can do this. And I think a lot of us are maybe touching it a little bit, setting one opener, setting 2 openers, equivalent. But if you can do that every single week, then you're going to succeed. About 2 years into my career in that industry, when the switch flipped, I was asked to be a sales manager. And I was good at recruiting. I could persuade people. I could get them excited about working together. And I began to recruit. And I would go to college campuses and universities and to career fairs where people were considering career changes, whether that was on a university campus or it might have been at a large trade show center where we were doing an event for anybody looking to make a career change. And I recruited nonstop. My goal every day was I had to recruit and talk to people. When I hired someone into that industry, an industry where 9 out of 10 people don't make it, I have to believe very similar numbers to what we experience in network marketing, I simply did what I told them that I had to do. And so I would sit down with people and I would say, your job is to set 10 openers every week. Now I knew that if they set 10 openers every week, the next week's activity would happen. I knew if they had a discovery call, they would come back and do some case design and they would prepare a report back for that family or individual, which would then signal a closing or a follow-up discussion, which would then signal an ask to buy, which would then signal a choice by the customer, and ultimately a client acquired. The only thing that I had to ensure that my people were doing on a daily, weekly basis was setting 10 openers. I knew that their skill development would accelerate if their activity was higher. So I didn't have to worry so much all the time about maybe they don't know everything perfectly to say or do. And I'll talk a little bit about this in the second half of my discussion with you guys, but it's an important thing to understand that the activity itself is training and development because you're learning as you go. There was one individual who I still speak with almost every week. He lives a mile from my home. When I was recruiting, I went to a summer sales organization and asked the manager there who the #1 salesperson they had from college. These are college kids that would leave, school for the summer months and go door to door sell. And so I said, who was your top sales guy? And they said, without a doubt, it was Jeff Johansson. And Jeff Johansson and I are dear friends to this day. I called him and asked him if I could take him golfing and get to know him. And he reluctantly agreed. I took him golfing and we got to talking and spending time together. And I shared with him this opportunity in the business that I was in. And at the time he wasn't terribly interested, but a set of circumstances actually got him to where he said, okay, I'll do this. And he came in. And I said, can you spare me your brilliance and just do one thing every week? If I take your business card and I scratch your title as financial professional or investment advisor or anything, I scratch it out and I see you have one job title and it's called 10 openers a week. And I said, can you do that every week? And he said he can. Now, when I was doing it for myself, I found myself not able to do it unless I set aside time. So it turned out that Tuesday nights I would block from 4 until 9 at night. And my goal, because I wanted to do it early in the week and just get it out of the way, was I was going to set my 10 openers every week, but I was going to use that call night, I called it my call night, to focus on making my dials and getting out in touch with people. Now, what's interesting about that is I was that person that was always getting ready to get ready. Wasn't my best skill. I'd clean off my desk and I'd get my list out in front of me and I would spend all this time getting ready to get ready. And I remember writing in a journal when I was about 27 years old that, once I start, I do as well or better than anybody. But boy, it was always hard for me to start. So I had to learn to set a time and absolutely clear my calendar. I told my wife I wouldn't be home. I worked a lot of nights because that was just the nature of the business I was in, at a lot of kitchen tables. But I set time aside to make those dials. And ultimately I got to where if I didn't have it by Friday, I wouldn't go on a date with my wife Friday night. I would work and I'd have to work Saturday until I got my 10 openers set. So I challenged Jeff Johansson to do the same thing. Now, to give you an idea, Jeff makes maybe $500,000 to $700,000 a year right now. And he runs one of the top 10 largest agencies for a 150 plus year old company. He's very successful. And the only reason he's still here today and doing very, very well is because he never failed on setting 10 openers a week. What that means, and I'll probably avoid my slides and just share this with you verbally today, is consistent activity, honest, intelligent, consistent activity is always rewarded. And in his case, he never failed the expectation I had. We would have what we called a PEP session on Monday: performance, evaluation, and planning. PEP. So we would review performance, we would evaluate his performance, and we would plan the next week. They were quick PEP sessions, maybe 20, 30-minute discussions. And on that, he would bring a simple piece of paper that was a form that I would give to him to fill out, and he would list out the openers that he had set the prior week. He made as much money as anybody that was in their third or fourth year by his first year. He just consistently did it. He wasn't the smartest guy. He wasn't the most technical with estate planning or investment management or the difficulties, but he was a master at honest, intelligent, consistent effort. Now, to give you some background on Jeff, he grew up on a farm in Cardston, Alberta, Canada. And to this day, he'll show up at my house to hang Christmas lights at my house. Like, he'll just knock on the door and say, "Hey, I'm going to put up Christmas lights for you." Or he'll pull up with a truck full of mulch and say, "Hey, I'm going to spread mulch." That's who he is. He will actually work till his hands are raw. So working hard for him was not a foreign thing. And once you told him what to do and just said, "Spare me your brilliance, don't outthink me, just do these things, this one thing, set 10 a week," that was it. That's deliberate practice. And what is he teaching people to do now? This is 25 years later, the exact same thing. I can assure you that if you were to sit with a Trish or a Denny or a lot of people that are doing very well in this business, they would tell you, I just do the consistent, honest, intelligent things every week that will provide a reward. So remember that focusing and breaking into manageable parts being 10 openers a week. I know that. Now, let's translate it. What does that mean for network marketing? How about contacts and invitations? That's it. How about I'm going to share a tool, a video, a presentation with 10 people a week? Or I'm going to approach 2 people a day or 3 people a day. Depending on your goals and what you want to see it to do for you, you back into the activity that's required for you to do that. And all I would tell you is that honest, consistent, intelligent effort is always rewarded. So keep that in mind as you consider the notion of deliberate practice. We all are going to get moments, myself included, where you lace off your shoes at the end of a day and say, "Is this really worth it?" I believe the most important thing to do is to persist through the difficulties and to declare your independence from the weather. Whatever's happening around you is not relevant, and to keep pushing forward no matter what. That persistence and endurance will do more for you than looking for other opportunities every 6 months and bouncing around. Stay true, stay on the same course, and be honest, intelligent, and consistent in your activity, and you'll see the outcomes that you want. The thoughts I wanted to share, a few other things I wrote down here. I want to talk about the power of conviction. I think sometimes we believe that we need to be experts in redox and redox signaling. We have to be biochemists. We have to be any number of things. You don't. What you do need to have, and what you should drip on and work on every single day, is a conviction. You need to have a deep, abiding, peaceful, and real conviction. It'll never be on trial. If you speak from a place of belief, then it's not on trial. No one can counter you. It doesn't mean that every person's going to react or respond favorably to your speaking from conviction, but there's a maxim I learned many years ago that says conviction sells and emotions buy, and logic pays auto ship. And sometimes I see people try to flip that, and they try to say logic sells. We're dealing with people, and they're not computers, and they don't do math the same way. They're illogical, but they're emotional, and that's good. That's part of the empathy. That's part of the humanity that I love. And if we can approach people and speak from a place of conviction, we'll trigger in them an emotional response. They'll sense and feel that we're operating from that place of conviction. if you're not doing well right now in your business, or you don't have people doing well on your teams, I would challenge you to ask yourself, what is your conviction level and what is their conviction level? And if you can assess the conviction you feel, could be on any number of things, could be conviction in yourself, in the products, in the company. We've talked a lot about this in connection with believe, belong, become. You have to be a chief conviction officer. Your people are watching to see any indication of doubt or hesitation on your part. And when you can approach this with deep, unquestioned, unequivocal conviction, you'll create a response in people and you'll drive a form of conviction. Years ago, I was talking to one of our leaders in Germany at the time, was having great success. And I said to him, can you tell me what it is that you're doing that's driving this success? And he said, yeah, I talk to people and I say, I've recently come across something that I think might be the most significant life science and health science breakthrough of our lifetime, not unlike the discovery of DNA or the discovery of penicillin. And I think it has enormous potential. And I'd like you to watch a video for 20 minutes and then let me reach back out to you. The person would say, okay, tell me more about it. And he would say, well, I've recently come across a health and life science breakthrough that I think is going to be the biggest breakthrough of our lifetime, not unlike the discovery of DNA or the discovery of penicillin. And I'd like you to watch a 20-minute video and I'll get back with you and let's discuss it. And they'd say, yeah, but tell me more about it. And he would say, well, I've recently come across probably the most significant health and life science breakthrough of our lifetime, maybe on par with the discovery of DNA or even penicillin, and I'd like you to watch a video. And I smiled as he was doing this. That's the third time in a row. And he says, I'm not going to talk about anything other than I want them to watch this tool, and I'm going to speak from a place of conviction. Very smart. He wasn't getting lured into extended conversations about any number of things. He was simply saying, watch the video, and then let's talk. Now, of course, after the video, he had a very simple follow-up next step with the end game of determining their interest level and engaging their activity in the business. And frankly, I guess what I'd love to tell you today, and the reason high activity matters so much, is when you have conviction and you speak from a place of conviction, the only thing left is to couple that with high activity. High activity and conviction will do way more for you than spending all your time getting ready to get ready and thinking about how you want to do it. You need to simplify it and go back to my emotionally doable, manageable parts and say, I'm going to set 10 openers. That's my language. Maybe for you, it's I'm going to have talk to 5 people and I'm going to share this video with all 5 every week. Now, what am I going to say? I'm going to say the same thing. Now, this is an industry expert telling me that he never deviated from how he said it and when he said it. I've recently come across a health and life science breakthrough that could be the largest in my lifetime. It's on the order of the discovery of DNA and penicillin, in my opinion. And I'd like to send you a 20-minute video. I want you to watch this. 10-minute video, 5-minute video, whatever tool you want to use. And when they ask another question, you do it on purpose and you say it the same way back to them. And they'll get it. And you'll just say, listen, I want you to watch the tool. I don't want to get into it. The tool does it much better than me. But I'm telling you from a place of conviction, right? You're speaking from a place of conviction that says, this may be the single greatest breakthrough in our lifetime. Now, guess what the beauty of high activity enables you to do? And you've heard me talk about this before. When you're highly active and deeply convicted, you can now be indifferent to their response. When you're highly active and deeply convicted, you can be indifferent to the response, meaning you can emotionally dislocate yourself from how the person responds. That emotional indifference, that lack of trying to change someone's eye color or convince them or get them to do something, the classic push-pull arm wrestle of sales and marketing and trying to get someone to want what I have no interest in that. What I learned early on when that switch flipped was that if I would simply be highly active and speak from a place of deep abiding conviction, that then I could be indifferent to their response, enabling me to move quickly. The very first day I was in this business or starting out in the industry I was in, I had lunch It was an agency luncheon. And I sat next to a like 50-year veteran of the industry who was guest speaking at this luncheon. It was like a banquet luncheon. I just happened to be sitting down to have this lunch. I grabbed my food on a plate. I sat down and I look over. I don't know who this is, but the way I describe it now, it would be like going to a basketball event and sitting down and someone says, "Do you know Michael Jordan?" I'm like, "I don't know who he is." That's who I was sitting next to. He was an industry giant, and he sat next to me and we started to have a conversation. And he said, "I'll give you one of the great secrets of success." And I was like, "Okay, great." And he said, "Know the facts of your situation and act accordingly." Well, that seemed really general and really dumb. But as I've gotten older, I've realized what he was saying is know the score and act accordingly. If you don't have a list of people to speak with right now, so you can't have high activity if you don't have a list that's full. And if you don't have a list, you've got to inspire activity to go out and create connections and interactivity to build that list, don't you? So he was saying, list is low, know the fact of your situation, act accordingly, build the list. List is high, right? Know the fact of my situation. I've got a fair amount of people I can reach to, act accordingly. Sit down on Tuesday night and make your call night and set your 10 openers for the week. That's simple. I've got a lot of openers I've had. Know the facts of your situation. I've met with a lot of people one time, act accordingly, follow up. So it seemed at the time like this really simple, almost platitude that he was sharing with me. But what he was really saying is the really good ones know the facts of their situation at all times and they act accordingly. So go back to this notion of if I can start from a pure place, I have empathy and aspiration. I believe in and I accept and absorb the concept that honest, intelligent, consistent effort is always rewarded. Realizing that deliberate practice, talent is overrated. This is not about, oh, he's more talented than me. She's more talented. That's not what this is about. This is actually about me saying, I'm going to be deliberate in my consistent practices, then break that deliberate practice into a manageable part, 10 openers a week. I'm going to do 10 openers a week. As I engage in that activity, I do so with a deep, abiding conviction, but I don't get lured into extended conversations where I know I'm in a maze and I'm not going to be able to discuss redox biochemistry. You shouldn't do that. What you should do is turn them to a tool, then know the facts of your situation. If you're in high activity, guess what happens when you follow up with someone? You can be indifferent. You don't have to act like I have to know what's next. I have to be able, no, you just follow up with a certain measured indifference that almost comes across as, I don't have time to sit here and try to change your eye color. I need to move. I need to keep moving forward. And because I have high activity, I have the belief that I'm going to talk to 10 people this week or 15 people this week. If you choose that the timing and circumstance for your situation is not right, then I'm going to liberate you and me from any following up, knowing the facts of my situation and acting accordingly. The fact is, this person is not interested. Timing and circumstance is not right for them. Move quickly. Think next and say, where am I going to go from here? What I find is most people spend way too long trying over here to change the timing and circumstance and interest of someone when they shouldn't. What they should do is be convicted in the way they share the opportunity and the product. Do it frequently and actively, speak from a place of conviction with high activity, create space for someone to process information and then follow up. But when you follow up, don't overreach that indifference. If they sense that it matters more to you than it does to them, then they will be less interested. If they sense that you don't have time because you're so convicted what you're doing matters and is going to make a difference in people's lives, that you're moving quickly, you'll inspire curiosity in them. And with that curiosity, you'll be able to move them across various choice points until they engage or disengage. What I find is we just don't have enough activity. So going back to my earlier experience and the successes I've had in my career, the game was always the principle and power of high activity, okay, coupled with deep abiding conviction, enabled indifference. And indifference makes the difference. People can sense and feel when I'm operating from such a deep abiding place of cause, mission, and belief that I'm not on trial. And while I certainly am not going to judge them if they don't want to engage with me, I've learned that if I stop trying to convince somebody and actually speak instead of convince from a place of conviction, belief, that they'll have a conviction inside of them, or at least inspired curiosity to say, I want to learn more. I want to see more about what this is about. So I would challenge you guys to think about what deliberate practice, high activity, honest, intelligent, consistent effort does for anyone. Talent is overrated. It's not the game. Some people come up after I've spoken at an event and make a nice comment, say, oh, you're a great speaker. Well, I've had my 10,000 hours. I ran a training school for Mutual of New York, one of the oldest insurance companies. And every month I trained for 4 straight days, hundreds of people every month for years. I was responsible for that. I've spent thousands and thousands of hours training and developing and teaching salespeople. So is it something that's talent? Well, no, I don't think it's talent any more than I think Eric Clapton is talented. Sure, he's talented, but I'll bet you he spent hours and hours and hours and hours practicing his craft and playing the guitar. We tend to see people at their best and assume that it's talent. It's not true. What it is deliberate practice. Its talent is overrated. They recognize that deliberate practice is the house of pain, and they're willing to stay in that house of pain and keep pushing forward. This industry is indictable for signaling to people that there's quick, easy money to be made. It's not fair and it's not true. Where it is possible is through honest, intelligent, consistent effort that is always rewarded. So what you want to do is reset your expectations and stop trying to reach a rank or something way out in the distance. Certainly those should be your longer midterm goals. But what if you were to break down your activity goals into something very simple, like 10 openers this week? And I knew that if I did 10 openers this week, I'd have several appointments next week. Those discovery calls would lead to case design. Those case design would lead to follow up and close and ask to buys. And those ask to buys would become customers, ultimately developed into clients. It was an absolute guarantee. As long as I knew the facts of my situation, which is I set 10 openers, I need to go to the openers. I need to do the face-to-face meetings. Well, that was almost a natural next step. I would act accordingly. Once I did those meetings, I would come back and do case design and present something back to them. Okay. Now in this business, it's very similar. If I know the fact of my situation is I don't have a list of people, then I'm going to curate a list. I'm going to spend time. I'm going to open my eyes. I'm going to follow my dollar. If I'm spending money at a dry cleaner, I'm going to talk to that person. If I'm spending money at a restaurant that I go to a lot, I'm going to talk to that person. And every person I talk to that says the timing and circumstance isn't right for them, I'm going to say my favorite phrase that I did with referrals was, who do you know that? With an ellipsis. Who do you know that's entrepreneurial, that's always trying to start something new? Who do you know that's frustrated in their current situation, economically or from a challenge perspective? Who do you know that's recently gone through a significant challenge with their health and is paying more attention to health than it matters to them? Who do you know that has family members that are dealing with some sort of a challenge? I could build my list in a single day with just a who do you know that script. Go out and meet with as many people as I can. And if you say, well, I don't even know who to talk to, follow your dollar. Who cuts your hair? Who does your dry clean? Where do you buy your groceries? Where do you get your gas? What convenience store do you stop in to get a water or refill a drink? Or you think about it, you're bumping into people all the time. Those people know more people. That's the beauty and power of networking. So if the timing and circumstance isn't right for them, I can pivot to a who do you know that script very quickly. And I can engage in a discussion to build a list. My list then just becomes my activity to set my 10 openers. And in your case, it becomes your opportunity to say, I've recently come across something that may be just as significant as DNA or penicillin. And you push it all the way through and just invite them. Once the activity engine restarts and you start getting higher RPMs in that activity, you're in a position to now, with conviction, now start to introduce indifference in someone else's response. You don't have to worry about everyone's response because you know you're going to talk to 10 more people. That simple equation gets rebalanced, and that high activity enables you to lower your concern for their response and honor their agency and their ability to choose as an adult. That honoring of agency is the exact opposite of what they think you're going to do. They're fully geared up and prepared for you to turn this into an arm wrestle of trying to persuade, cajole, and convince. And you shouldn't. What you should do is be confident and convicted in what you say and then move. Know the facts of your situation and act accordingly. That same individual that taught me that know the facts of your situation and act accordingly in that same luncheon back in the day when we would keep our lists, we would keep them on cards, and we normally put our cards in our chest pocket. And it was almost like a badge of honor. If you had a thick stack of cards, it meant I've got a list of people I'm working and finding. And he would say, and this is a term he used, he said, I want you to dead file the cards that you've not had any action with for the last 30 days. Dead file them. Dead filing meant throw them away, put them somewhere else, but don't keep working the same stack. Now, if you dead filed half the list because they weren't responding and they weren't doing anything with you, guess what you would know? You would know the fact of your situation was your cards weren't this many, it was down to just a few. And then you would act accordingly, which is you'd start to rebuild a list. Now, the beauty of network marketing and where you are in your business, if you're an Ascent qualifier, is you have teams. But what you need to do is inspire these principles and teachings to your teams. You need to be sitting down with them and teaching them the power of honest, intelligent, consistent effort is always rewarded. You need to come up with your simple 1 week expectation for activity. The one thing that you're going to say, spare me your brilliance. I don't care how you do it. If you want to use social media platforms, whatever it is, but this is the one thing that I know will make you bulletproof in an industry where a lot of people get shot and don't make it. Pardon the expression, but that's how it feels. People don't make it. So what's my job? Increase the probability of your success by giving you a consistent, meaningful, deliberate practice every week that you're not going to move from. You got to have someone to report it to. You got to have somebody do your PEP session with, performance evaluation and planning. You got to come back to me on Monday and say, I only set 6 openers last week. Well, that's better than 0. It's not 10. How does this week look? How's your list looking? Let's flesh out and build up your list this week. Let's act accordingly based on the facts of our situation. So guys, listen, I could keep going for several hours. I've got so many things in my heart and mind, but if you said to me, gosh, why aren't people succeeding in your teams as much as you might like? Number one, I think they've got to remember that deliberate practice, honest, consistent, intelligent effort is always rewarded. It's not a microwave. I used to say to these people I would train all the time that there is no microwavable network marketing career. If you've gone to a gas station and never ventured or dared to eat a microwavable burrito in a gas station, like you see these people doing, it's a 45-second cheese and bean burrito, and you're like, this tastes terrible, versus a slow roast, a crock pot at the house that's got vegetables and a nice piece of meat or something, or whatever you put in there, it cooks all day. It takes longer to have that benefit. Let's not try to turn our business into a microwavable career. Let's tell people that this is a crock pot, but it tastes so much better if you just give it the time and that transaction school through honest, intelligent, consistent effort that will invariably be rewarded. Do that by breaking it down into weekly activities that you're like my 10 openers a week. That was the only thing I worried about. If I had that and I knew the facts of my situation, I was going to act accordingly. Don't over communicate. If anything, under communicate, but do it with conviction. Say, I have recently come across, without any doubt in my mind, the single most significant health science and life science breakthrough of 10 lifetimes. And I feel so strongly about it. I literally put it on par with the discovery of DNA or even penicillin. And I want you to watch this tool, and then I'm going to call you back to discuss it. And if they ask more questions along the way, don't get lured into extended conversations. Just simply say the same thing back to them and smile as you say it, because they'll get it. They'll get that you're hammering the nail right to the wood saying, I just want you to watch this. When they do that and they sense your deep abiding conviction, your next step is to act accordingly and make sure you follow up. When you follow up, be quick and be indifferent to their response on the basis that I don't have a ton of time if this isn't the right timing or circumstance for you. And you know what I would do? If this isn't the right timing or circumstance for you, do you mind if I ask you 3 or 4 questions? Because I am deeply convicted that there are people you know that need to know about this. So quick question, who do you know that? 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 And there's a pretty good chance I could get 3, 4, 5 names of people, and I could immediately reach to those people. If Trish gave me those names and I'm calling Kim Marie Larson, I can say, Kim, this is Tyler Norton. I got your name from Trish Winkler. I promised her I would call you, and so I'm calling. I have recently come across this, and I shared this with Trish. She thought you might be interested in this, and then I go into that same deal. So guys, let's not make this harder than it is. What's your 10 opener a week activity? And it doesn't have to be 10. It can be 5, it can be 2, it can be, I'm going to make this many contacts, I'm going to share this many tools. We've all got to break it down into manageable, deliberate practice. We've got to spare our brilliance and quit trying to put a new combination lock together on this deal. It's tried and true. Consistent, honest, intelligent effort is always rewarded. That's what we need to focus on. And if we do that every week, have one person for 10 or 15 minutes, which is beautifully designed into our upline, reach out to them and say, I just want to do a quick pep session with you. Performance, evaluation, and planning. How did I perform last week? Let's evaluate that. And what's this next week looking like? That could be a time when I say I need some additional help with a three-way call. I want additional help with something else. And all of this should be done leveraging the tools and resources that your upline and a company provides. That to me is like the metaphor of you need to play the keys on the piano. If you're only playing 2 or 3 keys on the piano, if you're not taking advantage of fast starts or incentives or weekly calls with your upline or monthly or otherwise calls like these, or the online archives you have, literally sit down. My dad used to make me sit down and make a list of every resource and tool that I have access to. And he would ask me, are you levering it? Are you using it? And if you're not, then you need to think strategically how to bring all those tools and resources to bear in that very simple process, which is curate a list. I'm going to build that list. If I have no one on the list, I'm going to follow my dollar. I'm going to start by dead filing the names I've kept on my list forever that aren't moving. Dead file them. Just absolutely prune the tree. Why do you prune a tree? To get more fruit. It's the most counterintuitive thing in the world, right? Dead file and prune the tree from the names that aren't responding to you. Make one last call to them and say, listen, I haven't heard back from you. I'm going to pivot. I'm not going to reach back out to you, but I wanted to reach out one more time. I'm indifferent to whether this fits or not. If the timing or circumstance isn't right, but I need you to know I'm moving forward. Sometimes people will call back, sometimes they won't. But now what do I know? I know the facts of my situation and I can act accordingly. So I pivot and start building my list. And I'm working on building that list. How? Follow the dollar. Who do you know that? Open your eyes, open your mouth, talk to people, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And remember, liberate yourself. Who cares what they think of you? Who cares if they respond to you? If you're convicted what you're doing is good and right, then you don't have to worry about that. You just have to open your mouth. Now, as the list grows, that's the fact. How do you act accordingly? You set aside time for those initial contacts and clearly don't get lured into extended conversations. Have your tool ready to go or whatever it is you're going to point them to, and then say, I've recently come across something significant. I think it's worth your time. Trish thought I should give you a call. I promised her I would do that. I met her the other day, and I'm reaching out to you. And I can be very brief and invite them to engage with a tool. And then what does that fact tell me? The act according next step is I'm going to follow up. And all the while, I've got a very simple activity framework that says every week might be 10 openers. That's my old language. For you, it might be I'm going to make this many contacts and I'm going to make this many follow-up calls every week. And then simply have a pep session once a week with someone in your upline that you could sit down and say, how was my performance? Evaluate it, and then plan for the next week. Guys, it sounds simple, and it is. It's hard, right, to do it. Very few people put this kind of consistent effort in play, but I've done it my whole career, and I've seen unbelievable stories of success. And I now have decades to look back, and I can see cause and effect very clearly. It's the people that are willing to do the honest, consistent, intelligent effort, the deliberate practice, not the, oh, they're more talented than me. They just don't try to overthink it. They do the same thing every week. And as they do that, they start to build a practice that they're really proud of, and then it snowballs. It starts to build. There will come a crossover moment where you'll be paid more than you think you're probably worth in doing it. That's the beauty of network marketing. Very different, by the way, than investments and insurance. So anyway, guys, look, it's 9:58 a.m. my time, so I'm down to 2 minutes. And I just want to thank all of you for your incredible contribution to this company. I hope this is helpful. I've got a lot of scar tissue in these areas and have shared a lot of these principles with some of you. But I really do believe them, and I've lived them. I've lived them time and time again in combat. I know they work. And it's just speaking from conviction, being highly active, allowing for an indifferent response, so because you know you're active along the way. So I challenge you guys to start from a pure place with equal parts empathy and aspiration. I challenge you guys to remember the power of honest, intelligent effort and the importance of speaking from a place of conviction. That conviction sells and emotions buy, not logic. Don't try to become a chemist with somebody. Just speak from your heart with conviction and keep it simple. Get your pep partner You got to have somebody that you can do a performance evaluation and planning session with every week and check in with yourself. And you'll be surprised in 60, 90, 120 days, you'll go, wow, this is working. Like every week, I just spare my brilliance and I do these things and I'm moving forward. Things are happening. So Justin, I thank you for letting me join the Ascent call today. How I wish we were together face to face, but I look at the adversity and say, what does this challenge make possible? Maybe this is your time to reboot and get some pondering time to think about your business and where you want to take it when things start to loosen up and we can actually start to travel and be together again. So power of high activity, don't forget it. And thanks for all you do for ASEA. It's great to be with you. Thanks again, Justin.
Thank you, Tyler. Great, great words. Really appreciate you being with us today. Guys, just as a reminder, this call has been recorded. It will be sent out for a period of time. You'll still be able to view it. I know some of you have asked for that in the chat window there. So this will be available, and we will also be translating it for our friends in Asia. So thanks again, and have a great day.